So we all want to hit our driver better. Hitting a driver well sets up the hole. It gets you further up there in play, less clubbing. We now know obviously how important that is. I'm going to share with you today some of the biggest driver mistakes I still see loads of golfers make that you could really start working out of your game and totally transform the way you hit your driver. These are things I see good players do. These are things I see bad players still doing and good players would never do. And you can fix them, believe me, you can fix them. So point number one is driver lofts. I still see people playing drivers which are just not the right loft for them. So if we break it down to basics, obviously the wrong driver loft, so I've got a driver loft here of 9 degrees, so that's what it's measured at, you know, in a vice static. I'm going to hit this driver. Now I deliver a loft of between 14 to up to 20 degrees, which is why I'm always more towards 9 and 8s depending on the head shape and those kind of things. Now what I'm going to do is just put that ball on the floor, and I'm now going to try and hit my driver from the ground. So driver from the ground, I'm going to create a much lower launch. I'm going to create or deliver a very different dynamic loft. If driving changed and you had to hit from the ground, you weren't allowed to use a tee. No one's using 9-degree drivers. No one's going down to 8s and 7s. They're going up in loft. Like I reckon the lowest lofted driver, I mean some of the world's best might perfect like 10s. You're going to be 12, 13s, 14s, basically 3 woods upwards. So let's compare these two drives. If I can hit this from the ground. Top time. So I've hit that pretty good. It's a much lower flight and it's a completely different shape as well, and that leads us on to our next point when it comes to driver loft. Let's just show you where they have finished. So both of those tee shots had different launches, as you saw, so different heights, different amounts of carry, and then in turn what they've done is gone very different distances. But the other thing they had was very different shapes. They shaped different in the air. One drew and the other one faded. And think about that. When you're trying to play your driver, you're trying to control distance and very much shape. This is the draw driver, which has basically landed here. So, and we're going up a really steep slope here. So the teed up drive, as you can imagine, has flown the one off the deck, which ran. I saw it bouncing and coming in low, bouncing up onto that tee. The draws moved more into the left side of the fairway, where the fade there, I had to tee up on the right of the tee, me feeling like I was cutting it into the other side. So I think lots of people are just relating loft. Maybe I need to get the right loft so I get the right launches and I get the right distance. Yeah, that's a part of it. That's an element of it. But loft is three-dimensional. The way people control loft also contributes to the shape shot they hit. Now the driver from the deck, obviously there's other things at play, I get that, you know, I'm hitting different angles of attack, I'm hitting different paths, face to pass to make that work. But the thing is, with that launch, because the speed I've got, I can't draw a driver off the deck. I just haven't got the power for it to actually, it'll go so low, it won't launch, that it would fall out the air really quickly. And again, for lots of golfers, if you're playing lofts that aren't working for your game, they could contribute to the shape shots you're hitting. They can contribute to the lack of height and the distance, or why you have to tee it really high or low, all those kind of things. Just go and get your driver checked, because what you deliver isn't the same as what's on the club. You know, I've got a 9-degree and I can go down to 8s on some clubs, but I deliver 14, 15, near 20 when I'm getting it wrong. I can deliver too much loft. You know, I don't know what you're going to be, but no one's delivering what's on the club. Definitely get it checked. Big mistake I still see drivers in amateurs' bags. The next thing I find really hard to see with amateur golfers when they're struggling. Now bear in mind with this idea, if it works, keep doing what you're doing. But if you are struggling, and I see people, so I see golfers with like massively extreme grips, hugely forward or backward ball positions. You know, we're talking like right outside a lead foot, hands forward, or balls in the middle, hands up and forward. These kind of really extreme twists that you see with some golfers, often stemming from amazingly twisted weak or really strong golf grips. Often these extreme positions just don't work when you get your most extreme club in your hand, your driver, the club with the least amount of loft, the one that's going to punish you the most. Having some kind of neutrality in setup and what you're trying to achieve in your swing might just allow you to send a few more down the middle. And remember, don't think this means that strong grips are bad or weak grips are bad or far forward ball positions are back. Like, there's a people like who, you know, do use extreme positions, DJs, wrist angles, extreme positions. They can totally make it work. It's about how everything matches up. But when you see golfers really struggling, but just ignoring some of the basics that might need to be in place when you haven't got the best hand-eye coordination or you haven't played for that amount of time, so you know the longer club is really hard. Seeing them make those basic mistakes to the extreme, it's harder to watch. Definitely get lessons on some of your fundamentals will help with the big stick. So I'm going to hit 2 shots, and the first shot I'm going to hit a very common issue with driver from golfers is putting in a lot of wrist hinge. So either backswing trying to really hinge the wrist, what people would feel is up, and even on the downswing holding on to lots of wrist by accident or by design, but having a very wristy based action, which generally for most golfers encourages huge amounts of extension in this lead wrist, so what you might know as cupping. That action tends to manage the face this way, so we see 2 patterns with these golfers. Big wrist hinges to manage the face. They've got to start the ball left. To do that, they push back, so we get the leaning back follow throughs, these kind of shots. You've seen them, you've played with them as people try to really control their shots by playing huge shapes. I mean, and there's still a way that you can play that way, but so I'm going to put big wrist angles into this swing with the first ball, and I've hit fairway. It's not a bad shot, but you can see I've had to manage it and I've sliced it back basically to my target. Second swing, I'm just going to take a little bit of extension out of that wrist as I go back, and I'm going to really try and keep these angles out, so on the way back and the way down, not going to put loads of this in. And people often see this as, they call it, as casting. They get the feeling that people are casting, but actually when you measure golfers, what you find is the majority of golfers, or a huge percentage of golfers, are actually doing it very much the other way. They're holding on to far too many angles for far too long. So making some swings where you feel like you make maybe a longer, lower backswing, you try and keep that club away from right shoulder at the top of the backswing. As you start your downswing, you try and get that club to the ground lower to try and hit up at the ball. This might present in a different way, and just watch the shape of this compared to the first one and what it allows me to do with my whole body action. So there's a nice draw shape going on the same line as the first one. We'll show you the distance on these two because I think they'll be very different. And notice how my follow through was more this way rather than this way. If you think about it, if that club's going to be delivered, say, off to the right with the face, I want to be pulling back to try and straighten it up as I hit the ball to start it up the left. Where if I know I'm getting that club into a delivery position earlier, so getting less wrist in it, I can basically get my body turning to get up and through that ball, making, for most golfers, a much more connected golf swing, which absolutely gets them changing the shape of their shot. The amount of students I've changed their shape of their shot by how much wrist angle they put in. So what we think of hinging up and how much we go this way and this way. Great little rule of thumb you can do if you hold the club, say, in the middle of the shaft here. What you want to do, if you're someone who adds lots of wrist angle, you're going to be constantly keeping this butt end of the club away. If you're someone who's using a calmer wrist angle, what you're going to find is the butt end of the club stays on you for longer, and then it wants to get back on to you and closer to you earlier on that downswing, which allows you now to hit that ball. And you can feel it when you do this drill to actually get your body turning to get that face marrying up, rather than relying on these kind of real counter moves, which basically can lack a lot of distance, which we'll show you up there. So here's the slice shot, which I hit well, just didn't quite make the middle of the fairway. It gets very narrow here with these bunkers. And the driver shot where I used my body to turn through, I in effect cast it is what people would call, which they're scared of and don't like that term, and they think that it's going to be worse. But for most golfers, like lots of amateur golfers, promotes a high launch, lower lofted tee shots as well. You don't add loads of loft, so what happens is you can then hit up at it and get better spin models on it, where with my leaning back action and lots of wrist, that makes me hit down on it, so it gets that kind of low spinning carving to the right shot. Honestly, wrist angles for so many golfers, it's one of those things when I'm teaching, well, when I was teaching lots and when I see people now, it amazes me that I still have to do lessons with them on this, bearing in mind the amount of content I've put out there, knowing they watch content when they come, about this subject. It is definitely one people are really scared and still very confused about. Taking wrist out, just try it next time you're at the range. Try somewhere you use like what I call wooden man swing next to no wrist. Do one where you use loads of wrist. See the difference in the shots. You'll find there are patterns, and find your sweet spot. Start carrying the bunkers. Lovely. All right, last point, which I really want to see more of you doing, is play and use your tee height. So first shot here is going to be off my standard pink tee, relatively high, getting half the ball above the kind of middle of the, or the top of the club, right up towards the top. And I'm going to play the second shot here from this broken off white tee, much lower. Going to position it more there in the middle to the bottom part of my driver as it's set on the tee. Tee height absolutely influences delivery, shot shape, launch, distance it can be used. So let's say, well, there is out of bounds down the right here, lots of room up the left, high tee for me here. I'm going to hit down the middle and try and draw to the left side. So in effect it's moving away from the trouble, which that's done, slightly too far up the left, but there's plenty of room there. It should kick in a little bit, which it's done. Might have even hit the path. So now we're going to get it on this lower broken tee. Obviously it's the same conundrum, so now I'm going to aim up the left. This ball's going to move to the right, so let's pretend there's trouble on the left now. See how my lower tee height might be something I can use, because similar to that tee shot on the earlier driver, I hit it from the ground. That's just a lovely little safe fade into the middle of the fairway. So I can use my tee height to influence the shots. Yes, I might sacrifice some distance on those two shots, but that doesn't bother me if this hole measures 340 yards. As long as I'm hitting something over 250 up there, I'm only pitching in. If it's about keeping it in play more, there are two options there that can be used that absolutely are not being used by many golfers. I get golfers in my studio, put them on a low tee, exaggerates whatever cut they have, put them on a higher tee, it gives them the option to change club paths, face the path, those kind of things. Put it on a lower tee, there's just no chance they're going to do it. Use your tee height, best way to do it. Get out and practice off some different tee heights, see what you feel you can do off them, learn from those patterns and try and apply them out here on the golf course, because there's situations where you can use them all the time to get around. This is a killer tip, this is such a good one that just golfers are not using. So middle of the fairway, and I love the left drive there, much further, 15-20 yards further, but it's come off the bank here basically, so a bit more run. But the higher tee for me has got the more potential, the lower tee less potential for distance, but if the situation dictates it, it's just a skill, an asset, another tool I will use to try and keep the ball in play. Let me know if any of these make sense, which one was your favourite. If you've got any others, post in the comments down below. Let me know what you use, your best driver swing tips are. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll check you in the next video.